Consider this. What if the most powerful control system doesn't look like control? What if it wears your smile, speaks your language, and offers you choices, just to make sure you never really choose? Žižek doesn't believe we're brainwashed by force. He believes we're lulled to sleep by comfort, and the most terrifying part is this. The deeper you look, the more you realize how much you've mistaken the walls for freedom. You think you're free. You believe your thoughts are your own, that your choices, from the shoes you wear to the person you date to the job you chase, arise from some sacred core of individual agency. But what if all of it, your preferences, your morality, your rebellion, had already been pre-approved? Not by a dictator or a government, but by something far more invisible and insidious. This is Žižek's warning, that ideology no longer screams through propaganda, it whispers through comfort. Ideology today doesn't come with a red flag or a charismatic tyrant. It hides behind a smiling face and a product description. It tells you to express yourself, and then hands you a template. It tells you to be different, and then floods you with brands promising individuality in bulk. According to Žižek, the most dangerous ideologies are not the ones you can recognize, the ones you fight, the ones you fear. No, the most dangerous ones are those you enjoy. You think you're consuming, but you're being consumed. Your identity becomes a collage of cultural tropes, your rage a marketable aesthetic, your dreams just slightly out of reach, but always monetized. Modern ideology doesn't punish you for questioning authority, it encourages it. It gives you satirical cartoons, edgy slogans, and protest t-shirts made in sweatshops. It lets you feel rebellious as long as you keep buying. And so you become the thing Žižek describes, not a brainwashed drone, but a willing participant in your own soft imprisonment. Not because you're stupid, but because the game has changed. You don't need to be forced to obey when you're trained to believe you're choosing it. Take this example. You walk into a coffee shop and order a fair trade oat milk latte. You feel ethical, conscious, but the very act of choosing a conscious product already assumes a consumerist framework. Even rebellion becomes commodified. You are no longer fighting the system, you're accessorizing it. Žižek calls this the cynical functioning of ideology, the moment when even awareness of the problem doesn't set you free. In fact, the system relies on your awareness. It makes space for your criticism. It feeds on your irony. You're angry at capitalism? Perfect. There's a t-shirt for that. You hate injustice? Great. Post about it, buy the hashtag mug, and move on. You've expressed it, so now it's handled. This is how ideology hides, by agreeing with you, by pretending to be on your side, by letting you feel clever, critical, awake, while keeping you exactly where it wants you, distracted, tired, scrolling, and spending. And it doesn't just live in politics or economics. It lives in your relationships, in the way love is scripted, in the way ambition is defined, in the way pain is medicated. You're taught that love should feel like a movie, dramatic, perfect, stormy. So when it doesn't, you leave. You're told to follow your dreams, but only if they come with a LinkedIn banner. You're told to take care of yourself, but only through subscriptions, apps, and luxury routines. You're offered meaning constantly, but only through things that can be packaged, sold, and eventually thrown away. This is why Žižek insists we must not only look at what we believe, but how we enjoy, because our pleasures are the Trojan horses of control. You love your daily routine? Good. But is it yours or was it handed to you? You feel rebellious when you dress a certain way? Who profits from that feeling? You speak out on issues? Wonderful. But is your outrage real or algorithmically rewarded? Ideology today isn't built on silence. It's built on noise, endless opinions, performative outrage, carefully curated identities. You don't need a prison when you have endless mirrors to stare into. And here's the terrifying part. It doesn't even need to lie anymore, because the lie is already embedded in your desire. Desire, for Žižek, is not a private inner compass. It's structured by ideology. The very things you want, love, freedom, recognition, are shaped by systems you don't see. You think you're chasing happiness, but you're running on a treadmill designed to keep you exhausted. So the question becomes, how do you escape an ideology that rewards your rebellion? How do you break free from a system that markets your resistance? Not by screaming louder, not by switching sides, but by staring into the mirror of your enjoyment and asking, who taught me to love this? And if that question hurts, if it feels like your identity is unraveling, then you're finally getting close. Now wonder, what if even your deepest pain is being used against you? Stay with me, because Žižek's next insight cuts to the core of how your suffering became profitable. Pain used to be sacred, a private struggle, a wound that either broke you or transformed you. But in today's world, pain has a price tag. Suffering has been branded, and you're being sold a cure before you've even finished bleeding. Žižek doesn't just ask how we feel pain, he asks what we're supposed to do with it. And the answer, in today's ideological machine, is disturbingly clear. Don't process it, don't sit with it, don't understand it, just monetize it. Your heartbreak? Post it online, add a sad filter, let the algorithm push it. Your anxiety? There's an app for that. Your depression? Here's a new self-care routine with a 20% discount for first-time users. What used to be a cry for help is now content, and what used to be content is now consumption. But here's what Žižek forces us to confront. You don't need to be silenced for ideology to win. You just need to be distracted. And nothing distracts better than endless emotional stimulation wrapped in the illusion of healing. Today, we perform our pain. We aestheticize our trauma. We turn our wounds into narratives, then into posts, then into proof of identity. And we're rewarded for it, not with healing, but with engagement. That's the trap. In the name of being open, we expose ourselves. In the name of vulnerability, we seek validation from strangers. In the name of healing, we consume everything but the silence we truly need. And ideology smiles, because it knows that the more you hurt, the more you'll buy. You don't need to believe in the system. You just need to keep participating in it, even through your suffering, especially through your suffering. Žižek calls this the perverse logic of capitalism, where even what was once off limits is now for sale. Your body, your identity, your rage, even your spiritual journey. Feel broken? There's a healing retreat in Bali. Burnt out? Here's a mindfulness subscription. Lost? Here's a self-help guru who will sell you your purpose in 5 easy steps. But none of these truly see you. None of them dare to say, maybe your pain isn't a bug in the system. Maybe it's a symptom of it. We're told to treat suffering like a stain, something to scrub out, edit, filter, and eventually monetize. But Žižek challenges us to treat it like a mirror that doesn't just show us who we are, but what we're trapped inside. Your trauma isn't just personal, it's political. It reveals how your deepest emotional patterns were shaped by cultural expectations, how you were taught to feel, express, suppress, and process, all according to a logic that kept you digestible. Even the language we use around pain has shifted. We don't say we're grieving, we say we're processing. We don't say we're broken, we say we're on a journey. We don't say we're angry, we say we're setting boundaries. There's nothing wrong with these phrases, but they've become scripts, safe, sanitized, repeatable. They let us speak pain without truly feeling it, and worse, they let others hear it without ever being disturbed. We are taught to package our pain, to narrate it in neat arcs, to wrap it in soft lighting and hopeful endings, and if we don't, if our grief is too raw, too jagged, too real, then we're told we're being too much. But ideology doesn't just fear your pain, it needs it. Because if you weren't hurting, you wouldn't need their solutions. And so the cycle continues. You hurt, you consume, you're briefly soothed, you hurt again. Žižek's brilliance is in showing us this loop not as a failure of the system, but as its engine. And the scariest part? You might not even know you're in it. Because you do feel seen, you do feel heard, you do feel like you're healing. But that feeling is often just enough to keep you from asking the deeper question. What if healing, real healing, can't be sold? What if it costs everything the system wants you to protect? Your distraction, your image, your endless need to be okay. To break free, you may have to sit with the kind of silence that can't be shared online, the kind that burns away illusions instead of polishing them, the kind of silence that doesn't sell, but saves. But what if your silence is the very thing the system fears most? Žižek's next lesson reveals how ideology even controls how we see truth. We like to think truth is our escape route, that once we know what's really going on, we'll finally be free. But Žižek warns us, in a world of ideology, even truth can be weaponized. Even truth can become a performance. Because here's the twist. The system wants you to speak truth, as long as it's on its terms. It wants you to express your rage, your politics, your pain, but in ways that don't actually threaten anything, in ways that become part of the show. You can tweet about injustice. You can make documentaries. You can wear the t-shirt with the radical slogan. But if all of that exists within the marketplace, if your rebellion is just another brand, then you've been trapped in what Žižek calls interpassivity. It feels like you're doing something, but in reality, the system is doing it for you. You watched the film, you cried, you nodded, you even shared it, but nothing changed. Not in your behavior, not in your relationships, not in the world, because the illusion of action replaces the need for action. That's interpassivity, when the symbolic gesture becomes the stand-in for transformation, and ideology thrives on it. Take activism. You donate to a cause, you post about it, you update your bio, and for a moment, you feel lighter, as if you've done your part. But Žižek asks, what if this feeling is the real trap? What if the system survives not in spite of your resistance, but because of it? Because as long as you express your discomfort without changing anything, you've done exactly what was expected. Think of it like a pressure valve. If people didn't have somewhere to scream, they'd explode. So the system builds the scream room, gives it neon lights, and sells tickets. Žižek isn't saying truth doesn't exist. He's saying truth that gets co-opted loses its power. It becomes a decoration. It becomes background noise. And that's when the most dangerous form of ideology sets in. When you believe you're awake, but you're still dreaming. When you think you're rebelling, but you're just rehearsing lines. That's why Žižek doesn't trust the surface. He digs underneath, always. Because every ideology, no matter how noble, risks turning into a script. Be kind. Educate yourself. Raise your vibration. Challenge the system. These all sound right. But if they're used to avoid discomfort, to shield you from ambiguity, to preserve your sense of moral high ground, then they've become part of the ideology, not a way out of it. We're not just being controlled by lies, we're being lulled by truths that have lost their teeth. The scariest ideologies aren't built on censorship, they're built on performance. Everyone's talking, everyone's posting, everyone's raising awareness, but no one's changing. You don't destroy a system by calling it out. You destroy it by becoming something it can't digest. And that begins not with louder truth, but with quieter self-confrontation. The moment you stop asking, "What should I say?" and start asking, "What am I avoiding?" The moment you stop looking for enemies out there and start hunting for the ideology inside you. Because here's Žižek's most haunting insight. Ideology survives because it gives you exactly what you want. Just enough comfort to stay quiet, just enough truth to feel righteous, and just enough rebellion to stay in line. So if your truth isn't costing you anything, it might not be truth at all. If your discomfort never leads to change, it might just be entertainment. And if your healing is always easy, always pretty, always shareable, it might just be part of the show. Real truth offends. It confronts. It costs you followers, friendships, illusions. But it also wakes you up. So what happens when even your most radical ideas are part of the system? Žižek's final lesson doesn't offer comfort. It offers rupture. And that's where real freedom begins. To truly awaken from ideology is violence. Not violence against others, but against the comforting fiction that you are who you think you are. That the world is what it appears to be. That your values, your opinions, your goodness are entirely your own. Because Žižek doesn't believe the veil lifts gently, he believes it rips. And what it reveals is not some pristine, noble self. It reveals something terrifying. That much of what you are has been scripted. Your ambitions, programmed, your fears, inherited, your identity, marketed to you, even your rebellion, customized for your personality type. And this is where most people stop. They feel the first tremors of the illusion cracking, and they run back into the dream. Because it's easier to be a victim of the system than to admit you're its participant. It's easier to mock others for being asleep than to admit you were handed your definition of woke. But if you stay in the discomfort long enough, if you don't flinch, you begin to see through the last layer. Not just the ideologies you fight against, but the ones you cling to. Žižek's philosophy is not a call to revolution. It's a call to radical honesty. The honesty to say, I like my illusions. The honesty to admit, I am complicit. And then, the honesty to let it all collapse. He says, we feel free because we lack the very language to articulate our unfreedom. Think about that. You're not just trapped. You've been trained not to even see the trap. Your thoughts are shaped by algorithms, your morality, by branding, your deepest fears, by someone else's profit margin. And then you're told, be yourself. But that self was handed to you, pixel by pixel, from birth. This is not pessimism. Žižek is not trying to depress you. He's trying to wake you. Because only through the destruction of illusion can something new emerge. But it's not the new you were promised. Not the better version of yourself. Not the upgraded, healed, more spiritual version. No, it's the version that doesn't need to be seen, that doesn't perform. It's the one that refuses to fit the story. The one that laughs when ideology says you must choose a side. The one that speaks, even when it costs you everything you thought mattered. Because truth without cost is branding, and rebellion without risk is marketing. Žižek's entire point is this. The system doesn't just control what you do, it controls how you imagine freedom. You think freedom is choice, but what if all your choices were already pre-approved? You think freedom is expression. But what if your words only echo what you've been taught to say? You think freedom is power. But what if real power begins the moment you abandon everything that made you feel powerful? The real violence is not done to the world. It's done to your illusions. To tear off the mask, to burn the script, to look in the mirror and say, none of this is mine, and then to see what's left. That moment is not clean. It's not romantic. It's not a movie scene where the hero finally becomes who they are. It's disorienting. It's lonely. It's the death of everything you thought was true. But it's also the only moment where something real can begin. Žižek doesn't offer answers. He offers rupture. He doesn't offer meaning. He offers the space where meaning might emerge, once you're brave enough to let go of all the borrowed ones. The war against ideology is not out there. It's in the quiet places of your mind, where you still whisper what you were taught to believe. And if you dare to confront that silence, you might finally hear something that doesn't sound like an ad, something that doesn't sell, something that doesn't seduce, something that simply is. But now you may wonder, what do I do after the mask has fallen? When every illusion has been stripped away? The ultimate idea is the most difficult and the most liberating. What if you stop trying to escape ideology and start playing with it instead? You've peeled back the layers. You've seen through the illusion. Now what? You're still in the world. You still wake up in a system. You still speak the language, wear the clothes, play the roles. So what does Žižek offer to the one who has seen too much? Not escape, not transcendence, but play. Because once you understand that the world is a game and that the rules are lies dressed up as truth, you stop trying to win. You start playing differently. This is where Žižek becomes dangerous. Not because he tells you what to think, but because he tells you that all thought is already contaminated. Even your resistance, even your critique, even your identity. So what's left? The ability to laugh at the game, not with apathy, not with cynicism, but with a kind of radical clarity. Žižek's vision of freedom is not heroic, it's absurd. It's the freedom of a person who sees the theater, knows it's fake, and still walks on stage with their own lines. Not to become someone, but to reveal something. Something that breaks the cycle, something that confuses the system, because it can't be bought, sold, or categorized. He calls it traversing the fantasy, not escaping fantasy, not destroying it, but moving through it until it no longer defines you. And from that place, something else becomes possible. You stop asking, how can I win? You start asking, why am I even playing? You stop saying, this is who I am. You start saying, Who is speaking through me right now? You stop trying to be authentic and instead start asking, who gave me this idea of authenticity in the first place? And maybe in those questions, a real voice emerges. Not the voice of your trauma, not the voice of your culture, not even the voice of your intellect, but something else, something deeper, something unbranded. Žižek says, the only way to be truly subversive is to be more ideological than ideology itself, to show its absurdity by becoming its mirror. That's what clowns do. That's what fools do. That's what saints have always done. They don't preach a better dream. They tear the dream apart with laughter, contradiction, and silence. The goal is not to escape the matrix. It's to short-circuit it, not by rejecting everything, but by exposing it with such honesty that it collapses under its own weight. That's what Žižek offers. Not a map, but a match. Not a solution, but a spark. He hands you the tools, the questions, the riddles, and then he walks away. Because no one can liberate you from ideology, not even philosophy. Only you can do that. And only when you stop chasing freedom and start watching what you've become in its name. So maybe the final act of resistance isn't rebellion. Maybe it's attention. Attention so sharp, it cuts through every mask, including your own. And in that moment, you're no longer a subject of ideology. You're no longer the product. You become the glitch, the interruption, the break in the script, and maybe, just maybe, that's where real freedom begins. If this resonated with you, if it made you question something you thought was solid, then stay close. Because on this channel, we don't chase comfort. We chase the truth, even when it burns. Subscribe, like, and join the community of seekers. Until next time, keep shining, not to be seen, but to see.